reasons that people come to the EASD Congress is to get a glimpse into the future. And there was a session on the program which was really intriguing, looking at the future of anti-obesity medications. And to talk us through that, we have two of the people who were presenting. We have Daniela Liśkiewicz and we have Juan Pablo Frías from Los Angeles. So let's just kind of look at first at what are the trends in medications. Obviously, we're going to, as we've seen with the small molecule launch, we're looking at oral perhaps rather than injectables. And even with the injectables, we're going to longer intervals between. Is that how you'd see it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen just a tremendous amount of advancement with the GLP-1 based medicines. When they first started, they were twice daily injectables, then went to once daily injectable, once weekly injectable, like semaglutide, tirzepatide. And as you mentioned, now going even further out, there's some in development once every 2 weeks, once a month. So I think the convenience to the patient, very important. And also this GLP-1 base to many of these medications. And as you mentioned, also moving into oral. We have oral semaglutide. We've had that for some time, but also small molecules as well, such as orforglipron. So that's where we're headed. Not only GLP-1, but also targeting other important receptors which act to reduce appetite and help with body weight reduction.
And Daniela, also we're seeing kind of multi-purpose, aren't we? That, you know, some are more focused on obesity plus, say, chronic kidney disease or obesity plus cardiovascular disease. And it's a bit like somebody had discovered a kind of single penknife with a single blade. And now we've got the, you know, penknife with all the kind of 32 blades and the special attachments. Is that another trend?
Yeah, that's true that there are many medications developed right now around the initial GLP-1 concept and then dual agonist, and now we have triple agonist. Together with, we are also targeting glucagon receptors. People are adding also other gut hormone receptors to it, like amylin. I think there are many drugs in development in companies to pharmaceuticals. Different groups are, of course, looking on different aspects. And I think it also depends on who is specialized in what. And then they are looking on cardiovascular or the kidney outcomes. At the end, I think what finds its place in the market depends on many factors. Most of all, the adverse effects and how the people perceive the drugs and whether they are able to adhere to them. And of course, the efficacy of the new developments.
And do you think we've stopped that trend where it was every single one offered a greater weight loss percentage, and then, you know, people were getting disappointed that, you know, it wasn't offering a 50% weight loss.
Right.
And, you know, it's only offering kind of 25% when actually, you know, even 5 years ago, 10% would have been magnificent.
No, absolutely. I mean, now we're seeing with some of these medications, you know, 70% of participants in trials anyway having greater than 15% weight loss and, you know, greater than 20, greater than 30%. You're right. I think the trend should be just for more quality weight loss as well, and for the patient's health, as opposed to having just how much weight they lose as being sort of the end point, if you will. I mean, we want our patients to be healthy, to not have all the complications of overweight and obesity, and to have a good quality of life. So as we're studying these medications, we clearly need to be making sure that when weight is lost, that most of that weight is fat, that there's not sarcopenia and muscle loss as well, that physical function actually improves rather than worsens. So I think we need to be careful, but we're getting to the point, as you mentioned, that with each generation, if you will, of these medications, we're seeing more and more weight reduction, which is good. It just needs to be quality weight loss.
Yeah, so weight loss won't be quite so, you know, the deciding factor. Do you think also that you'll see versions of drugs for older people? So we've been talking in the studio today about frailty and how many people living with diabetes are actually, in their late 70s, 80s now. And actually, the very last thing you want is to reduce their appetite and have sarcopenia develop, because they're only eating biscuits as it is.
Yeah, whether it's a different drug or just lower doses. I mean, oftentimes when I use the drugs that are available today you have to personalize it to the patient, how much weight they want to lose or they need to lose. And clearly we need to be very careful with elderly patients in particular. And it may just be lower doses of that drug that could be used in other people at higher doses, but it may be other drugs as well and could be personalized.
So let's talk about the type of new medicines, new therapies that you personally have been involved in. Daniela.
So as I mentioned before in our conversation, I'm working more on the preclinical drug development in a lab that is really specialized in the incretin field in Helmholtz-Munich. And my personal work is focused on a new molecule that is a conjugate that is combining the incretin actions with another very promising class of drugs with PPR agonists. And PPRs are master regulators of metabolism. They've been in a center of attention as a potential pharmacological targets for many years. But despite these huge research efforts, they actually didn't, just a couple of them made it to the market. They were discontinued due to safety issues. And they are now serving more as a supportive therapy than the main therapy for, let's say, diabetes. And in our molecule, we are actually delivering the PPRs only to cells that express the incretin receptor, because it's a conjugate. PPR is nuclear hormone. The incretin is a peptide hormone that has its receptor on the cell surface. That's why when we conjugate the PPR to the incretin backbone, we are delivering it only to the cells that express incretin receptors, and therefore kind of improving.
So very highly targeted.
Yes.
And with improved safety. And of course, actually, the safety profile, now we're seeing a lot of real world data where we're seeing some of the problems of the incretin therapies, kind of gastric problems and nausea and actually malnutrition in people who are, this is not the fault of the drug, but because people are eating very small number of calories and they're not eating enough protein and that kind of thing. So I guess adverse effects avoidance is going to be an issue. Tell me about the drugs that you're developing.
Yes, I've worked over the years on GLP-1 receptor agonists, so-called monoagonists through the years, like semaglutide, for example. Did a lot of work with tirzepatide. So really the trend is for these what are so-called unimolecular multi-agonists, so one peptide that has activity at multiple receptors, like tirzepatide is GIP and GLP-1. But what I've worked on and what I'll be presenting is something, it's actually a combination of two separate peptides, one being semaglutide, which is a selective GLP-1 receptor agonist, and the second being cagrilintide, which is a long-acting amylin analog. And amylin is a hormone that's secreted with insulin from the beta cell and has some very interesting actions. And one of the actions is centrally to reduce appetite. So in combination, you get greater weight loss with this, what's called CagriSema, or semaglutide with cagrilintide, than you do with semaglutide alone or with cagrilintide alone. And it is in phase 3, and the first 2 phase 3 studies, one in people with overweight and obesity without diabetes, and one in patients with overweight and obesity with type 2 diabetes, were recently reported and published, and they were actually presented here at EASD in Vienna this week.
So you two are both presenting your particular areas. What else are you seeing on the horizon at the moment that interests you? I mean, as someone who's developing therapies herself, do you look at and think, that's interesting?
Yeah, I mean, as said, there are many combinations of gut hormone receptors, and people are working on that. But I actually think that this field of incretin is starting to be a bit saturated, and we know already how to reduce weight, right? But we don't know how to keep the weight
maintenance.
Right? So I think that the next big biological target is actually resetting the set point. So giving the people who are losing weight opportunity to not to regain the weight, right? Because they tend to regain the weight because of metabolic adaptations that happen to the body. So finding out how these processes actually work biologically, because it is not also completely clear, and then being able to target these pathways. I think
that's so interesting, because the real world data that, again, we're getting back is that a lot of people come off these drugs. They come off them after a year. And one of the reasons that they come off them is because they don't like, not being able to go out to a restaurant with their friends, or, eating is a big part of our social lives. And, that's an issue for some people. And the idea that they will carry on taking it for the rest of their lives, it's not actually something that patients or people living with diabetes, I should say, are going for.
No, I think you've got a very good point. And so that's why what you mentioned is so important at the end of the day. And certainly when someone loses weight and loses a lot of fat, and if they lose too much muscle, when they regain it, generally it's mostly fat. So body composition then changes significantly, and it's not a good thing. So I completely agree with you. I think finding safe ways to maintain that weight reduction is very important. I'm also very interested in prevention and just preventing the obesity in the first point. That's something that I think is clearly important. My practice is in a very underserved area in Los Angeles, and really sort of food islands where you cannot find healthy food. So there's a lot to be done on that part of it, and with childhood obesity as well. And I'll say one particular interest I have is actually metabolic liver disease. And, going back to the medications again, looking at glucagon receptor agonism, and now, drugs like retatrutide, for example, which is GIP, GLP-1, and glucagon receptor agonism, a very, very potent effect on defatting the liver. And I think that's an important issue that we're seeing with so much obesity these days. So there's a lot to be interested in, which is a good thing.
Yes.
Good problem
Anything novel that you've seen that has really intrigued you that's coming up?
You mentioned it, and maybe it's not the kind of novelty you're looking to hear, but I do think the small molecule GLP-1 receptor agonists are extremely important to have something that, from a supply chain point of view, can get throughout the world, is relatively easy to take. So whether, initially it's a selective agonist of GLP-1, later on there'll be combinations with other, but I think having a small molecule that's a non-peptidic is very important for patients throughout the world.
I think what is very important also right now, but goes a bit beyond pharmacology, is actually teaching people how to change their habits. So going back to the lifestyle intervention, to the lifestyle intervention, but in combination with the pharmacotherapy, because the people who are actually specialized in lifestyle intervention, they tend to kind of oppose pharmacotherapy, right? But I think they have a big role right now, because we are helping people to lose weight, which is right now with pharmacotherapy much easier than it was before. But they will regain this weight if they don't change their habits, right? And I think that preparing programs and teaching people how to now change their habits, it's extremely important. And as you mentioned, people they're not eating enough protein, for example, right? And I imagine that even if your appetite is inhibited, it's not easy to actually adhere to a proper diet, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is extremely important.
So that's really interesting, and it's a bit like, isn't it, with depression, where you need to treat with therapy in order that CBT can be effective. And like with these, the incretin-based therapies, the initial weight loss, that's the thing that keeps people going and then gets them into the eating, the better eating habits. But you can't do the two separately. You need to do the two together. So it's a really fascinating area. There's all sorts of things coming up. And I suspect that what you'll see is, because people are so interested in this area, you'll see something come in left field completely and will be absolutely bowled over. So there's so much more to come. Thank you both very much indeed. And do, if you want to hear more about the future of these therapies, do look at this on the EASD website, where you'll find a whole range of the programme available to watch.